everyone. One of the main questions that we are asking ourselves as bioanthropologists when we are analyzing ancient human skeletons is, how did this person die? And in order to do that, we are searching for what we call the cause of death. Sometimes this cause of death can be seen in the skeletons as skeletal manifestation or dental manifestations in rare cases. But other times, unfortunately, we cannot really define the cause of death directly. But what we are doing as bioanthropologists is to look at all these bones, bone by bone, to see if we have any abnormality, trying to search and to understand what is this abnormality and if it can tell us something about the cause of death. This is what we call the paleopathology. The paleopathology is the analysis of ancient skeletons in order to define the diseases. In this case, it might be just with eyes. We are looking, searching for abnormality. But most of the time, this analysis is supported by the histological methods, from a simple X-ray to the CT scans or even to biochemical analysis. And this is what we call the molecular paleopathology. Once we spot the abnormality on the human skeletons, we need, first of all, to exclude the normal reasons, let's say, behind this abnormality, which means we need to exclude the taphonymical conditions. Taphonymical conditions are all the process that is happening and leaving traces on the bones inside the burial, for example, or the decomposition conditions inside the burial. And this is what we call the taphonymy. This is the question when we are analyzing the paleopathology. We want to exclude the taphonymy. This is the question most of the time. Is it pathology or is it taphonymy? Once we know that it is pathology, we need to do a detailed describe. The detailed description must start with the location, with the type of this abnormality. And then we should not stop at this abnormality. We should have the whole look of the human skeletons. Why? Because several diseases might leave the same kind of skeletal manifestation or dental ones. So it's not because I'm seeing this spot that I will say, for example, it is a syphilis or it is a Pickett's. No, I need to go to all the other bones because with the studies that we are doing these days, we know that each disease is leaving specific lesions on other bones. So for example, if I'm doubting that I have a syphilis, I need to go and check the lower limbs, for example, and etc. And this is what we call the differential diagnosis. And this is the base of doing the paleopathology. We cannot jump to the conclusion and say, oh, this is a syphilis or this is a Black Death. No, it's a process of excluding, and at the end, you will have the answer for the paleopathology that you are analyzing, if it is already defined and if it is possible in the microscopical analysis. There are 4 types of abnormality when we are analyzing paleopathology. We're going to go through each of these with a quick example in order to see how these skeletal manifestations are seen on the bones. The first one, as I said, it is the bone size. This is a normal femur, let's say, which means without any suspicious lesions. And this is also a femur, an adult femur, for an individual of the same age as this one. So which means that the difference in size is not at all about the age. The difference here is related to abnormality based on the size of the bone. And this is the achondroplastic femoral, which is defined as a pathological lesions. The second abnormality is related to the shape of the bone, which might result from growth development or poorly mineralized formation of bone or biomechanical loading or poor alignment related to a fracture. So here we have an example of two femurs of a subadult, which means that it's still under 20 years old, which means that the bone is not fully growth. But what is interesting in this case is this bowing, as you see here. So it's not like very straight as we know it in the normal femur. So this bowing is characteristic of the disease of rickets. And we know that the rickets is happening in the childhood. So here, a lot of information at the same time can lead me to say that we might have a case of a rickets in this because of the abnormality in the shape of the bone. While the third abnormality on the human skeletons, when we are talking about paleopathology, is the bone formation, which means that we notice on the bone that there is something new bone formation that it is not usual to see on normal bone. So here again, we have this femur, but the abnormality here is not about the size. Here I can see that there is something growing here, the porosity, new bone formation, and this is typical of the osteomyelitis, which means that an inflammation happened here and bone formation, it happened for a long while. And even if we are seeing the section of this bone, which is possible only with the CT scans or the X-ray, for example, we can see that the bone from the inside had completely constructed something new. And this is what we call the abnormality related to the bone formation. Bone formation can be really in different aspects. It can be also like what we call it the lamel bones. So these kind of lines on the bones. So here clearly, for an anthropologist, we can spot that there is an abnormality with bone formation. Something new was forming on the bone during life because of a disease that affected this person. Sometimes it is very tricky because we are questioning if it's taphonomy or pathology, but other cases are very easy to spot when we are having new bone formation. For example, this is a fragment of a skull. We know that the surface of the skull is smooth and rounded, like a bowl. But here we have this bowl, let's say it, and this is a bone formation, and this is what we call a kind of tumor also. And the last type of abnormality is the bone destruction, which means that here we have something exactly the opposite of the third one, which is bone new formation. Here we have bone destruction, which means that areas on the bones are destructed, that there was loss of bones, and without remodeling, which means that the diseases is attacking these bones, and sometimes it's several bones at the same time. And we can see it here on this long bone that we are missing a lot of pieces, but it's not taphonomy because we can see it even in the inside of the bone. So the destruction was very high that it led to these aspects of the bone, showing that there was a kind of inflammation or infection in this area, which means that this person has suffered from a certain disease related to an infectious one. Another example here of destruction, we can see it in the skull itself, and here we have this hole, but at the same time it's completely destructed the interior of the skull, and this is something that we can more examine with some CT scans or 3D models in order to see if the destruction also is happening at the endocranial surface. But of course, in order to spot the abnormalities, we need to be keen in human osteology, which means that we need to know what is normal femur look like and what is humerus looks like. So that's why the basic of doing paleopathology is the human osteology, and to know bone by bone in order to spot the abnormality and not miss these abnormalities. But of course, when we are studying the human skeletons for pathology analysis, we should keep in mind that some diseases, which might be also brutal, that the person might died from this disease, but that the disease was very quick, that it didn't leave time to leave any skeletal manifestations, which means that we can say that this skeleton is healthy because we don't see any signs of pathology on it, assuming that the person died without any pathology. But we should keep in mind that it's not because we are not seeing any skeletal manifestations that this person was healthy, because some diseases are very quick, that they will never leave time to leave manifestations on the skeletons, telling us as anthropologists later that this person was not healthy. So this is something that we should always keep in mind, and this is what we call the osteological paradox. Most of the time when we are doing paleopathology, we are also associating what we call stress markers. And we should be careful from that because most of them are called the non-specific stress markers, which means that we don't really know the reason behind them. One of these is the cribra orbitalia, which means these lesions that we are seeing on the orbits. Others are seen on the teeth, for example. We call it the hypoplasia. These are the lines that we observe on the teeth that can also tell something about the stress period that the person went through during the childhood. So this is all about the keys of paleopathology, a quick journey to the world of pathological lesions and a quick reminder of what we call the stress markers, which is also very helpful in any pathological analysis. Thank you for watching me, and I hope that you learned something about healthy and non-healthy with the human skeletons. See you!